Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today back with another Mercenaries video. This one is going to be talking about what exactly can we expect in terms of new characters from this next big Mercenaries drop that will be happening in the point 0.4 patch, so that'll be 23.4. These are typically the patches that bring the mini set, and going off of the last patch notes, it seems very likely to me that this patch will be releasing a week from when this video goes live on Tuesday. So, got a week left to wait in theory. Again, this date has not been directly confirmed or anything, but it seemed pretty deliberate with the way they worded things in the patch, especially compared to last time for the most recent round of patch notes. And I'm pretty confident that the 31st will be the point 0.4 patch. So, if we look back at kind of the history of the game, we see two different things, really. The first kind of mini set after Mercenaries launch, they actually really tried to tie it in quite a bit in terms of the theme. You might remember that's when we got Pirates and Cookie and all them, and it definitely made sense. You know, we got a mini set themed around pirates, and we got a bunch of pirates and stuff. So, but then the following mini set, they kind of did the opposite with Onyxia's Lair. We eventually did get characters that were themed to that kind of mini set, but they decided to hold those ones back for a little bit later and to coincide with the mini set when it actually released. I believe that was when they had the first wave of dragons, the Celestials, come out. So we could have it go either way, though. My guess, what I'm betting on, is I do think they are going to pretty heavily tie this into the Sunken City, and we can already see that a little bit in the new boss we got, Gigafin. This kind of made it unlikely to me that we're going to see one of the possibilities that I'm going to bring up here, which is Colossal Mercs. So if we look at the most recent Hearthstone set and the themes that were most prominent in it, one of the big ones was Colossals, a character that is represented by multiple spaces on the board. And this is a really cool design space to explore things in. And I was curious if we were going to see this in Mercenaries. However, after seeing the new bounty and the Nazoth event, I think it is very unlikely that we get Colossal units in Mercs or Colossal Mercenaries. And if we do end up seeing any more Colossal stuff, it's probably going to be bosses and PvE encounters, much like Gigafin was. This isn't that surprising. It is a little disappointing, but given the limitations of Mercenaries and how the board is already getting too full at only 6 spaces, it kind of makes sense that having a unit with an extra spawn or two might make things just not really work out very well, or might be too limiting. So maybe that's something they can explore in the future, but for now, I do not expect any mercenary designs involving that, as if we were going to get something like that, I think we would have gotten it with Nazoth, as I'm expecting in the mini set, Nazoth might be our first neutral Colossal minion. But moving on from that, what can we expect in terms of the themes from Sunken City? I think there are 3 main options, and I think it's pretty likely we do see stuff from at least 2 out of the 3, if not all 3 of them. But the main themes for Sunken City that kind of transfer over to Mercs would be tribes. So Sunken City was a very tribal-focused set, and the units in particular, or the tribes in particular, that got the most support in this expansion were Murlocs, mechs, and the newly added Nagas. So can we expect to see those tribes in Mercenaries? We already have Murlocs, so that is a given, and I would be very, very surprised if we did not see a decent amount of Murloc support. At the very least, Sir Finley, he was actually who I was thinking was going to be our event, and I thought they would tie the Nazoth event into the mini set, but it looks like they did not do that. But we do know we are getting a Murloc, and a red Murloc, more specifically, based off of some comments a while ago from Charles, I believe. So we do know Murlocs are coming, and I don't see why they wouldn't come in this one. So, because it's just too on point with the theme. And Murlocs really need support. They are one of the weakest tribes out there right now, along with like demons pretty much, in that they just, most of their units don't really do a whole lot, and the synergy is just not that great between them. They're also, Murlocs have a bigger problem of they literally only have green and blue units, and as we've seen with other comps in the past, that can be very limiting, especially when it comes to PvP. So I expect Murlocs at the very least Sir Finley, but it would not surprise me if we get a handful of Murlocs, as that tribe needs help, and it fits in with the theme of the set. So next up, Nagas. So I think Nagas are pretty likely as well. We did have the more recent patch, which added them to Battlegrounds and then subsequently nerfed them. I started playing a little bit of Battlegrounds recently, and Nagas are absolutely nuts there. So it would not surprise me if we got Nagas in Mercenaries. I think if you're going to introduce a new tribe, and if they're only going to pick one new tribe to focus on, Nagas are probably the way to go, as I think there's a lot of interesting design space you can explore there, though I do worry a little bit about them being as overpowered as they are in some of the other modes, as they have been very, very powerful units and cards and whatnot. But maybe that's what we need, given the craziness that is Trigor and the meta that comes with him. So I think Nagas are pretty likely. I'm really curious if they would ever do something similar to what they did with them in Battlegrounds with the Spellcraft mechanic. I thought, even though it is a bit overpowered in that mode, I'm curious if they would ever experiment with that kind of design space in Mercenaries. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. The other tribe that I think has a chance of kind of making an appearance here are mechs. Mechs were the other big theme of Sunken City. There are a bunch of mech-related decks running around right now, Mech Mage, Mech Paladin, and it was just a very prominent part of the set. And I think mechs are actually a really perfect tribe for Mercenaries, but I'm curious how it would work, as traditionally mechs are all about synergizing with each other, and probably their most apparent and powerful tribal mechanic is the old magnetic mechanic, which allows you to kind of build mechs on top of one another to buff up their stats. And unfortunately, I don't think there's really a good way of accomplishing that in Mercenaries, because combining two Mercenaries would probably be pretty broken. There would be a trade-off there, but if it was just stats and didn't mess with the character's abilities, I think it would just be way too strong to have magnetic make it into the game. The only way I could see something like that working is if maybe there's a way where you can have mech spawns that are magnetic or something. So if they spawn and then they attach to a unit, but at that point you're kind of just buffing with extra steps. So it's definitely an interesting challenge to see how they're going to. I do think we're going to get mechs eventually in Mercenaries. It's just kind of a question of, do we get them this time around or not? I think what's more likely is I think they're going to focus on definitely Murlocs and probably at least one new tribe. I think they're going to pick Nagas over mechs, as they just have a bit more open-ended design space they can do with the Nagas, rather than mechs, which I think don't necessarily translate to Mercenaries quite as well. So maybe it'll take a little bit longer before they figure out a way to kind of accomplish that. So those are kind of the three main tribes I think have potential to show up in this next big drop in hopefully a week. One character I do think would be really cool to see in particular that was featured in the Sunken City would be Blade Master Okani. So this character added a very interesting effect that we have not seen in Hearthstone before, whereas the first minion or spell your opponent plays, while he's on the board, he gets to counter it. You get to pick if it's a minion or spell. And I think this could actually give us a pretty interesting mechanic for Mercenaries if they wanted to adapt it. Currently, we don't really have much in the way of preventing spells. Right now, if you're an attacker, the main kind of way that you deal with attackers, if you want to protect stuff from getting attacked, is taunt or divine shield. And Divine Shield, I guess, works against protectors too, but it's a lot harder to give Divine Shield or get it than it is to taunt currently in the game. And there isn't really any form of spell taunt or something like that. So one thing I think would be really cool is if we did get a Phelan mercenary, or not Phelan, if we did get a Blademaster Okani mercenary, is you could have his items be like passives where the first spell your opponent casts of the game or while he's on the field gets countered. And then if you want to have it stay with that thematic kind of trying to be like the card in Standard, you could then have his other item be the first summon your opponent plays gets countered. So I think that'd be a really cool way of potentially introducing this character and making his kind of abilities and themes and mechanics kind of transfer over from Constructed to Mercenaries. So I do hope we end up seeing him as well as Finley. I don't think Finley's going to be anything like his standard card, as there's not really a way to do that since we don't really have a deck in Mercenaries in the same way. So it'll be interesting to see. Definitely expect some Murloc synergy, though. I am hoping the whole set is not all focused on tribes, as one thing we have seen in Standard and whatnot is that sometimes when they go all in on tribal stuff, if that tribe doesn't really work out, then so many of those cards or mercenaries end up being useless. And when those characters take up a very large percentage of the set, that can be pretty problematic and make it feel like the set wasn't very impactful. A great example of this is kind of Rogue in Standard before the buffs. Rogue, most of their good cards or interesting cards were all about the pirates, and when Pirate Rogue wasn't really good enough, it just basically made the class pretty invalid. Now it's seeing a little bit more play because of some buffs, but the point still stands that if they do go all in on a tribe, they need to be careful about doing that, because if they make it too underpowered, then there basically is a huge percentage of the new content that doesn't see play. And if they make it overpowered, then we end up in a Trigor situation where the whole meta ends up revolving around a certain tribe. So definitely some careful balancing has to be done when it comes to tribal stuff for sure. But I do think there are tribes that need it, as well as new tribes that would be cool to see. I wish demons could get some support too. Maybe if we're lucky, they'll throw a Sabone and throw a demon in there too. But I think if they do end up theming it around Sunken City, which probably will happen, then they're not going to really be prioritized to include demons, and maybe they'll save that for an event or the next big drop. But hopefully I'm wrong about that, because I would very much like the demons to get some support sooner rather than later. But those are my thoughts on the upcoming drop. Should only be a week out if everything we have seen is correct. And in theory, that means if it is coming on that Tuesday, usually a day or two beforehand, they will drop the mini set trailer. So we have that to look forward to. But I'm curious what you think, what your predictions are. Do you think they're going to be Murlocs? Do you think they're going to be mechs or Nagas? Definitely let me know in the comments, and we won't have to wait too long. We are almost at the end of this really, really long dry spell, and hopefully things will be more improved in terms of the metagame with the new content. But that is going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, do remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.